The heat wave is at an end, the rain has returned, and I am exhausted, and I've accidentally done makeup that looks akin to drag makeup. That was unintentional, but I'm having to run with it now and pretend that it was. I also used heat on my hair to curl it when it wasn't entirely dry, and now we're kind of in this limbo stage that has some bits of curly at the front and other bits that look straighter than a pin. Welcome to the Podscast. I'm Poddy Wilson. This is my podcast. We're in episode 9 now. Can you believe? A lovely cube number for everyone to enjoy. What's been going on this week? Well, plenty of things and not much sleep. I'm feeling a little bit on the edge, just purely because the lack of sleep is catching up with me. I'd been mostly fine, and then all of a sudden I think I've gone through the wall. I'm out the other end now. The exhaustion's really hitting. Why am I exhausted, I hear you ask? It was the Oriel Ball weekend. So I went home, and it also coincided with the heat wave, so I wasn't sleeping fantastically either, and the ball was from 7 p.m. until 6 a.m. So I got 4 hours sleep after that. Had a little nap in the afternoon as well, but that did not make up for the lost hours. So we're kind of going through it at this point. It's been a romp. It's been a roller coaster. Plenty has been going on. We'll get to that immediately after we roll titles. Okay, first order of business also, can we just have a look, if you're watching this visually, at this handbag? Look at that. You see what I'm talking about this magenta colour? Isn't that so pretty? Thank you to the Barras. So yeah, we're embracing the magenta and the purple kind of colour. With the eye look, I think it's kind of there. It looks a little bit more vampy than I was intending. And then I've gone for a bit of a light lip, which combined is kind of... it's brush colors. It's brush colors, and I've still got my double dip tan, which on this camera I can see in the monitor is an interesting color. It's coming up interesting. I did obviously do my makeup this morning in a room with the curtains closed and the big light on, and the color that I thought I was is very different to what I'm seeing now. So it's bordering on Mar-a-Lago, but I'm trying not to get stressed about that. We've just got to lean into it at this point. Now, obviously the headline of the week that's been is the Oriel Ball, and I have plenty to say about that. But let's begin chronologically with Thursday, when I went to get my bridesmaid dress altered because they arrive super long because they're trying to cater to all heights, and then the idea is you go and get it shortened. That's fine. That's fair dues. I've been procrastinating it because I procrastinate everything in my life, but I finally got my act together and I went to the seamstress who lives on our street, so that's easy enough. And I hadn't actually worked out where it was. I've driven up and down that street a million times, but never had been able to pinpoint which house the seamstress was in. And then I got there and it was like curtains drawn through the window, a neon flickering light. I was like, okay, sure, fine, cool, this will be fine. I walked in and the lights were all off inside. The bell rings ominously above my head. There's coat hangers everywhere, things hanging up, but no one behind the desk, and there's an iron that's clearly still on. Oh, I guess this post's been abandoned. And I sort of call, hello, is anyone there? And this woman comes through and she kind of goes, what would you like? And I said, hello, I've got a bridesmaid dress that's quite long for me and I just need the hem taken up, if that's all right. She went, go and put it on. So I went behind the curtain in the corner of the room and I put it on, and I brought with me the shoes that I intend to wear, which are, by the way, massive. They're huge. They're the ones that I got in the charity shop in Blackpool. They're so big, and they're kind of... how do you describe them? They're kind of all one shoe. Like the heel is sort of attached to the toe bit, in that kind of platform wedge type thing. They're nude, and they are, I can't emphasize enough just how tall they are. The platform is kind of, what's that? That's at least a couple of inches of just platform alone. And then the actual, the incline is incredibly steep. But weirdly, they're very comfy. I think they just hold my foot in a really nice cushioned way, and I have also practiced wearing them for a full day to see if I can do it, and I can, so that's fine. So I know what I'm doing. However, when I put on that shoe, I then realized actually not much needed to be done with the skirt. It essentially was almost there. I'd gone from 5'3" to 5'10" in a matter of seconds. So I was like, oh Jesus, should I actually be getting this altered at all? Can I not just pick this up? But I don't want to be the bridesmaid that trips down the aisle and bouquet goes flying, it's a whole mess, boob comes out, that kind of thing. So getting it altered all the same. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, I actually look quite nice. I've been quite stressed about getting in it because I also think the way that they're made doesn't allow for a lot of boob room. It's a problem that I always have with getting clothes online is there going to be boob room? And I had to size up, which was not great for my morale to size up anyway. And then this is the bigger size and still the boobs are kind of a little crushed. They will be fine because I've got tape now. I've got the double-sided tape, so they're not going anywhere. I know that for sure now. However, there was a moment of fear as to whether the zip was going to even go up around the girls. But we have circumvented that problem. Dress is on, dress is lovely. And the lady is starting to, lift up the layers and use the scissors to separate the various layers and pin them where the shortening will go. The whole time, entirely mute, not saying a word to me and just kind of going, come in. And then after kind of 15 minutes have passed, she kind of goes, I didn't get what to do, bit. And I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. Oh dear. I don't have a suggestion. I'm not a seamstress. I don't know what to suggest. She doesn't know what to do with this dress. I don't know what to do. And what appeared to be the problem was that it seemed to be shorter at the sides and longer at the front and back. So it's not an easy hem to do. So essentially she was just like, it's going to be more work. It's going to be more work. So that is a problem for her now and not for me. But the most surprising thing about this entire exchange is that the entire time that I was having the hem measured and pinned up into place, throughout the entire exchange, there was the sound of her dog throwing up in the back. For the entire thing, for the entire 15 minutes, she's like, brr, brr. There's like horrible noise. And she did not flinch. She did not address it. It might as well not have been happening. I was like, have I gone through the looking glass? What is going on? This is the weirdest exchange of my life. So I picked the dress up on Thursday. That was an odd way to start the podcast calendar week. I also, on that day, got my period. And I know that Max said his whole thing about, I'm not going to listen to your period. I'm not going to listen to your podcast. All you can talk about is your period. I don't want to know about that. And I was like, I don't just talk about my period. I'm going to be talking about my period a fair bit in this episode because it has dictated a lot of what's happened this week. Because that evening I was having a fight with CapCut to try and do my little social media clips. Now, who will have noticed, who's paying attention to what I'm doing on the whole social media front for this podcast? But normally I would have a video for every day of the week to go up to kind of advertise what I talked about in the podcast episode before. You may have noticed that this week there has only been 3. The reason for that is that CapCut just tanked. As I was exporting it, I essentially had, okay, this is really annoying, like fourth wall break to explain how I'm doing social media clips, but whatever. I had all the clips within the same file because I'd just taken the podcast episode and chopped them up into the bits. And then I would kind of Control X cut all the other ones and then export one at a time and then paste all the others and then get rid of the others and export it that way by having it all in the same file and then cutting and pasting them like that. And my laptop, for some reason, is convinced that it has no storage. Now, I don't know why this is because I have deleted everything that I possibly can. There is fuck all on this thing besides the apps themselves that I need to use to do any work. I don't understand how I can have any kind of like journalistic or editing career on a computer that has this little storage. I just don't understand it. It's when you look on this storage thing and it says like system data. What's that? What's that? Why have I been advertised something that supposedly has 200 gig, but 150 of that is just quote unquote system data? That's not then 200 gig. That's not storage that is actually usable for me, and it winds me the fuck up. This computer really is just doing my nut. It also now has decided that headphones don't work with it unless I rotate them at a certain angle when they're inserted into the port. I'm really anti-Apple. Unfortunately, it just seems like there isn't really another option. Every time I see someone else's phone that isn't using Apple, I'm like, oh God, it takes so long to get used to that setup and, the layout, what the apps are, blah, blah, blah. But Apple is just getting worse and worse with every update. It really does my nut. I'm so angry at the Apple employee who told me I had to update my phone to get something to work. When was this? Like February last year. And I'd not updated it from the last one. And then I got the update and I'm like, well, can't use camera roll anymore because camera roll doesn't exist. It's impossible to find any photos. If I duplicate them, they duplicate them back to the same place. Whereas if I duplicate them, I want them to be at the bottom so I can see where they are because I've duplicated them for a reason, which is to make them the most recent thing in my camera roll. It's utterly unusable. The way they've even hidden like where screenshots are, the screenshots folder, where the favorites folder is, where all the folders I've made, you've organized it in such an annoying way. And the scrolling is backwards, just all these things. I'm like, why? It was so much better before. The worst bit is fucking watching a video because it's so difficult to like pinpoint it to the moment that you want it, especially when you're trying to crop a video down. It's utterly unusable. You just think, who made these decisions? Anyway, this is clearly, you can hear the period in my voice. Long story short, CapCut wasn't playing ball, and in the process of exporting one video, the entire program crashed, and thereby deleting like 4 more clips that I'd made. And it takes a really long time to like isolate the clips, edit them in the way you like, and then get all the like green screen bits on, get the outro on there, get the little animation bit at the beginning. It takes a long time, and I was like, I can't do this. I've spent such a long time doing these clips. I can't redo these 4. It's now like 10 p.m. I just have lost the entire will to live. And that was the moment when Kieran FaceTimed me from a bar in Miami with his sister, and I had a full crying, toys out the pram, hissy fit, tantrum, it's a real like periody cry when you're like and then it sort of subsides for a minute, and then you remember that CapCut's fucking tanked the work that you've been working on all afternoon. It comes back. I was not a happy bunny. I really don't like CapCut anyway. It's like, it's the best of a bad bunch, but also what the insistence of it pushing all these AI features I'm not interested in. Out of interest, I once used the one that's supposed to clean up your audio, and it made it even more robotic and tinny and full of like harsh background noises. It did the opposite of what it was supposed to do, and I was like, well, obviously none of these AI tools work the way that they're being advertised. It's a complete waste of time and energy, and the fact that they're now also charging you just to do the captioning is a piss take. They didn't used to do that. You know, it does my nut. And had I the resources, I would be all over Premiere Pro. Although I'm aware that that's also pushing AI stuff, which is really annoying. But again, I'm well aware this laptop doesn't even have the storage for like 3 tabs to be open, let alone to have Premiere Pro on there, which is very, very irritating. So that was my Thursday night complete breakdown. And so, sorry to talk about the period a lot, but it's been heavy. And it has been painful. 2 things that I don't enjoy. So I went down home on the Friday, and my sat nav decided to really amp up my irritation by just fucking me about for a bit. It took me on a 50-mile-per-hour dual carriageway that I've not been on before, that is unnecessary for me to use. Essentially, I have to get from Johnston to get onto the M6, and I've never been on this weird dual carriageway before. I was on it for ages. I was on it until like Dumfries. It was insane. Why am I on there? So I was getting really annoyed, being like, I want to be going 70. I want to get home. I don't want to be on this dual carriageway forever. So I was already annoyed at the sat nav, and then I'd put in the stop at T-Bay. As we all know, I love to stop at T-Bay, and it took me to the northbound T-Bay. I'm going home. Why are you taking me to northbound T-Bay? And I can't like mess with it while I'm driving. I can't concentrate on 2 things at once. That's insane. What am I, a woman? I can't multitask. So I was it was taking me on this mad roundabout route, taking me off and then going round and then going over and under and on a bear hunt through the mud. Can't go over, under, round it. Got to go through it. To go to northbound T-Bay, which, as we all know, I think is cursed and has a weird heebie-jeebie vibe. It's dark and cold in there. So then eventually I managed to wrangle my way round to get to southbound T-Bay. Well, this whole convoluted route that said, don't come here unless you're going to the hotel or you're driving a lorry. Reader, I was doing neither of those things, but I did manage to get there in the end, only for the vibe to be off. And I was like, I don't want any of these foods. I don't want any of this food stuff. And everyone was working at a sedate pace. And I was like, it's rush hour. It's breakfast. There's so many people here. You guys are working so slowly. And, you know, I would have more sympathy for people working slowly. I think had I actually not been a bartender myself and done these kind of rush hour, everyone's in, like the whole cycle groups come in on a Tuesday night and everyone wants a a pint of watery beacon at the same time. I've been in that situation, and I worked quickly to match the demand. These people were not working quickly to match the demand. They also did not make eye contact or have general manners, and they were speaking to each other instead of me the whole time. And I was like, what's going on? What happened to the service industry? It makes me feel like such a Karen. It makes me feel like a Karen, which is not what I want. However, I do think that I nailed being a bartender, and therefore I have very high standards when it comes to just the basic manners of the exchange. You know, I don't want to be a stick in the mud, sound like a boomer. However, I just think there are certain criteria that need to be met when you're working in a service industry and it's busy. And it was all breakfast stuff, and I was like, I don't want it right now. I have those periods where I'm like, I don't want anything that has been fried. I don't want that. I don't want that. I've got a hankering for granola. Who'd have thought this is the person I've become, to have a hankering for granola? Who am I? I've lost all sense of myself. But I did, and I was like, I just don't want anything. So I had these hash browns, and they were like bricks, and they actually were quite tasty, but it burned my mouth quite a lot. And I was like, already not enjoying this journey. So the journey was quite annoying, but I got home and I was like, finally, I'm home. I can relax. I can breathe the fresh air. And I went to open the extraordinarily heavy door of my Fiat 500. Why are they so heavy? I have no idea. Swing the door open, and I get smacked in the face by the most aggressive heat. The most aggressive heat I have ever experienced in my life. It was like a brick. It was insane. I mean, wow. You know, I've been up here enjoying lovely temperatures in Scotland during the heat wave. That's my ideal temperature, is like mid-20s. That's fantastic. I love that. I can get a little bit of a tan on. I can get the freckles out without feeling like I'm being boiled by the Spanish Inquisition the whole time. I get out my Fiat 500 at home. Oh my God, it's purgatorial. It's not nice. It's not nice. I've never been so glad to be up here rather than downstairs. Jeez Louise, that heat was intense, and there's no reprieve. You're indoors, you're outdoors, there's nothing. All the air is the same. It's all syrup. It's syrup as far as the eye can see, as far as the skin can feel. It's not nice. So we ended up getting the pool out, which was the move. And there were lots of lovely photos of me just sat in it because I couldn't wait for it to fill up. I just needed to sit in the pool at like 1 inch worth of water, cool my ass. That was the move. And we had a lovely time just sitting outside, me being in the pool, and listening to the most recent Jessie J album, which slaps, by the way. I love Jessie J. I've been saying for years, where's Jessie J? I miss her. Turns out she was really ill, so fair enough her not to be, you know, completely in the public eye. But I'm so glad that she's back in the public eye, because she fucking rocks. That album is so fun. Love Jessie J. On Saturday, I went to the ball. I was feeling nervous ahead of the ball. Balls are difficult. They are difficult. Okay, so here's my history with going to balls. The first one that I went to was the Regent's Park Final Fling in 2022. Bear in mind, pandemic was only just sort of tailing off. Whoa, the penguin's on the move. It was only just tailing off, and I had a friend that was at Regent. She was like, it's an annual thing, it's really fun, it's the cheapest ball you can go to, and it's, you know, one of the only ones that you actually can go to this year, so why not? So I went along to it, and it was really fun. There were loads of people there that I knew. There were people from college, there were people from drama, and it was a really great vibe. Can't even remember who was playing. I think it was mostly uni bands, which I think it's a fairly universal thing across all the different colleges at the uni for a lot of as like student bands to play, and they were all, to the best of my remembrance, they were great. And it, you know, there was plenty of entertainment going on. The food was lovely. You know, there weren't the most options ever, but there was enough for the people there. You know, you could choose toppings on the pizza. That'll do. And you get all dressed up. And did Aljo play that yet? No, Aljo didn't play. Did Aljo play? Maybe Aljo played. Can't remember. I was in love with Aljo, you guys. I was a massive jazz orchestra fan. So I had a fantastic time at that one. The next one I went to was the Oriel Ball in 2023. I was with my ex at the time, and he did not have fun. We ended up leaving far earlier than I wanted to, I think it's fair to say. So I was really quite annoyed. I was quite annoyed because they're expensive tickets. They were £200. I know, but hold your fucking horses. It's going to get worse from here. The theme was wonderful. It was themed around Avalon. So they had all like a knight sculpture that you could have a photo with, and they had all medieval tapestry bits hanging up. It was really fun. And best of all, the music was brilliant. They had Top Loader, which, you know, I think it's fair to say a bit of a one-hit wonder, but the one hit is a really fun song, you know, Dancing in the Moonlight. That was really good fun. And then they had Scouting for Girls, and Scouting for Girls were spectacular. spectacular. I think they are the perfect band to get in for a ball, because it does not matter how many of their songs you know, and it turns out that everyone knows like at least 3, and they play Posh Girls, which is really fun. But irrespective of how many you do or don't know, they will get you involved. They'll teach you a bit of the chorus, they'll make it fun for everyone. There's a lot of like speaking to the crowd. I saw a Substack or an article or whatever this morning that was about the fact that Lily Allen doesn't do any speaking to the crowd in her current tour, which is her performing West End Girl. And it's her just performing the album end to end, which essentially the album's kind of an audiobook or kind of a play. Like, it makes sense for that to be the narrative form. For the price that she's charging, I understand why people are getting annoyed that it's not longer. I think that should be more reflective in the price, you know? But I understand that as a format for that particular piece of music. However, when you're playing festivals or you're playing balls, I think you feel shortchanged if there's not more talking to the audience. You know, there has to be that kind of interaction. There has to be some kind of specificity that you're there for this event. And there are people who are really good at it, naming no names, Kieran, naming no names, Jared. There are people who are really fantastic at it, and there are people who aren't. Scouting for Girls were great. They really just included everyone. They made it feel super special. And that was a lot of fun. There also were plenty of food options. Food was really exciting. The bar was great. The cocktails were so delicious. And crucially, they had pre-prepared all the cocktails. Also, there were like tons of bars dotted around, but the cocktail bar was on the first quad. And they pre-prepared them in these, you know, tall bottles, you know, with the sort of stopper things. You know, when you have like a condiment bottle and it has the sort of stopper nozzle, one of those, so you can kind of tip it over and then you give it a yank and that stops the flow. Do you know what I'm talking about? Anyway, the reason I'm explaining that in such great detail is because we were there like lying on the bar with our mouths open. They were filling our mouths with cocktails, and that was great fun. And it was so tasty. Ideal. So that ball, much as I didn't see as much of it as I wanted to, which I was really quite annoyed about, it was very well organized, very well executed, and I had a lot of fun at it, and the music was great. The next one that I went to would have been St. Peter's Ball, and I was just not feeling it that night. It was more me than anything else. But I do think also the music wasn't massively inspiring me. I wasn't having like the most fun ever, aside from Dot's Funk Odyssey, DFO, because Rue was the front woman there. She was doing an absolutely spectacular job, and she did all the like, was it Uptown Funk they were doing? It was some kind of thing where they were like, oh, the girls sing Uptown Funk You Up, Uptown Funk You Up. Oh, the boys sing Uptown Funk You Up, Uptown Funk You Up. Poddy Wilson sing. And then I got a shout out, and that felt great. I was there with the boys. They didn't even witness that bit. They weren't listening. That bit was about me, and they didn't even see it. But the security was really bad at that ball, so it ended up just being a kind of a free-for-all. And the food vendors closed really early. They closed at like 9. You can't have the food close at 9. That's way too early. So we were hungry. I'd had my paella. I was ready for a second paella, and then I was like, fuck, everything's closed. Don't have the food vendors close early. Rule 101 of running a ball: make sure there's food at all times. There must be something on which to snack. I also was not particularly feeling it because that coincided with the weekend when Trinity people were over in Oxford, and Ayush and I were not aware of this at the time, that they had pre-organised this date, because we'd had our tickets for ages, and then we only stepped up to be Dublin reps quite last minute, so we didn't know that they had decided this was the date on the same day as the ball. So I was like, oh god, I just want to hang out. I want to hang out with the Irish people. I don't want to be here. I'm not having as much fun as I feel like I've paid for. I want to go and hang out with the Irish people. So I left at midnight and then went and hung out at Jolly Farmers with them and had a much better time. And a minor theft occurred later in the night, naming no names. John. So there's now a bust that actually I think was stolen from Balliol in the first place, that then wound up in, or I'm not sure I should be saying this. Anyway, it's in his living room in Dublin. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? It made its way into another country. Don't ask any questions. So that was St. Peter's Ball. And then I went to the Regent's Park Final Fling again that year. And that was so much fun. And I went with Molly and her fella and my brother. I finally got to bring Max to a ball. And that was really great to have him there experiencing it all. Granted, he got sidetracked with flirting with people. But in the end, you know, we made it onto the dance floor for the silent disco. So So it worked out in the end. Again, the food was sufficient. There were enough various entertainment things. There was face painting. There was lots of photography. I think having enough photographers is also quite a crucial thing. You need to have enough relative to the number of people that are there, because you do feel quite shortchanged if you don't appear in any photos. And it was Coco Cotton, and the photo's really nice. It's one of my screensavers that's on rotation. A lovely picture of me and Max with my chebs out. They were out. I was in my red jumpsuit thing that I wore when I fainted in Sicily. How many of you are aware of this story? When I went to Sicily post GCSE with some girls from school, and I got sunstroke, but also I did have champagne, a gin and lemonade, a glass of wine, and I think something else, maybe a vodka lime and soda. And the others said they knew something was wrong when they asked if I wanted some chips, and I said no. And then the next thing you know, I stood under the table, and they had to call the Sicilian emergency services, and they came rattling up this like rural town's cobbled street in their tiny rickety ambulance. And the restaurant were really worried that everyone was going to think I'd got like food poisoning from something they served me. So they were trying to like bustle me out there sharpish. So they got me into the wheelchair. They strapped me in by the wrists and then covered me in a white sheet. I looked like a lunatic being escorted out on the way to Bedlam. That was a little demeaning and dehumanizing. And the other girls found it really funny. And there are videos still of me being rattled along the street like that in the wheelchair with my modesty blanket hiding my chebs because I was wearing this red jumpsuit. And for ages afterwards, I was like, the red jumpsuit's cursed, not going to wear it. But then I did wear it to this ball and it was a hit. It was a smash. I felt really comfy and chebs were out. So that was a really fun one. And they had on a number of Oxford bands, but also they had on the Valor, who I hadn't heard of at the time. They're growing at a rate of knots, and they were really great. They were charismatic. Their music was really fun. They engaged with the crowd. That was all great. So that was the last ball that I went to, which also, by the way, was 24 hours before my last exam, which I think I was trying to remember this in the car. It was either my what centuries? 19th and 20th centuries paper, or it was my Baudelaire and Flaubert paper, which either was my a paper on which I scored a first, or my lowest scoring paper. It's hard to remember which one. I like to think it was my Flaubert and Baudelaire one, which was the first. I think it was that. So, don't let an exam get in the way of having a good time. I've had a varied experience when it comes to balls and the level of enjoyment that I get. They are so expensive that I do put a lot of pressure on myself to have fun. And I get quite stressed ahead of time thinking, am I going to have enough fun? Because the price of the Oriole ball was £250. Yeah, I know. So for that money, I could have gone to a weekend festival and camped, It's big money for an event that takes place over the course of 12 hours. So I was like, I really want to feel like I got my money's worth. Did I feel like I got my money's worth? No, I don't. No, I don't think so. By quite some measure, I think it should have been at most £100 less. I really don't think that the quality that was provided by the organisers matched up to the price tag they attached to it. So on an organisational level, I was quite underwhelmed. And to the point where I was like, what is it that I paid for? Is it the number? Because this is the 700th anniversary. Am I just paying for the experience of being here at a sort of red letter date? So that was quite disappointing. The big thing was the music, because come on guys, like Magdalene had Rizzle Kicks. Not only did Magdalene have Rizzle Kicks, they had Rizzle Kicks and Bimini. They had two big names on there. The Fratellis were at Trinity. And we got two people that I've never heard of. Other people seem to be quite impressed by Groove Armada. Unless it's someone who has charted in the UK, I am not particularly interested. I think it has to be someone that's charted. It has to be someone that I know. And not just, a one-hit wonder. Because I wouldn't have known the name Top Loader. I know Dancing in the Moonlight. I wouldn't have been able to tell you that it's Top Loader before they performed at the ball. I know the song Lady. Well, I know the first word of it. I wouldn't have been able to tell you who played that. So that was quite disappointing for that to be the headliner. It's like, can we not get a band? Can we not get to be honest, the Valor would have been great. The Valor would have been great because that's a band and they would engage with the audience. Mojo just, they didn't really talk to the audience at all. The high point of that set was them singing a cover of Rihanna. They played Lady 3 times, you know. I was like, are we not going to get anything else? And I look around and the tent's like half empty. That was disappointing. For the 700th anniversary, I thought the Spice Girls were going to reunite. Like, I thought we were going to get something utterly insane. So that was quite disappointing. And, you know, I've heard whisperings here and there of the problems that the organisers have faced in the organisation of this ball. To be honest, all the rumours that I've heard, I was like, that sounds like an utterly avoidable problem. My sympathy is limited. That sounds like something that could very easily have been averted. I don't know how you got into this problem in the first place. So the music was not fantastic. The food options it was just like a burger, a pizza, chips. I was like, where's the paella? Where's the gyros? Where's the pad thai? Like, there was noodles, but that, you know, again, everything closed too early. And I just think when it gets to 3 a.m, you want there to be food options because everyone's eating at 8. By the time it gets to 3, we're Hank Marvin. We are Hank with a capital H. We're hungry. I was so hungry. And 3 a.m. was my real, my wall that I had to push through. That was when I flagged the most. And I had been erroneously told by a member of our group that there would be breakfast from 4. Had I not been told that, I think I probably would have gone home at 3. I was only holding on because I was like, just get me the bacon and hash brown sandwich. If I push through to 4, I can get the sandwich. That'll rejuvenate me some energy and then I can carry on with the silent disco. But at this point, I feel like I'm not connecting to the music that's being played at the silent disco for a start. And I am so hungry. My energy is really waning. I'm so glad I had 2 donuts instead of 1 because I'm running on fumes now. I'm running on the powdered sugar from those donuts right now. That's all that's left. So that was the moment where I was like, I just get that bacon and I'm fine. The bacon actually didn't wind up coming out until about 4:45. So I stayed on false pretenses, but I'm glad I did because that meant that I got to the end. I also think there just wasn't enough decoration. The theme was a really interesting theme. It was Dante's Inferno, and the idea was it was going to be different circles of hell for each quad. And there just wasn't any decoration. I was expecting there to be like, I don't know, people dressed as demons and whatever else. Like, I remember when Queens did Alice in Wonderland, they had, you know, the Queen of Hearts walking around and the White Rabbit, that kind of thing. I was expecting there to be people walking around dressed on theme. I was expecting for some kind of decoration rather than like one door that had some tissue paper glued to it. Ugh. And also, going back to me being nervous beforehand, there had also been like a tension around the dress code because the committee were enforcing that it was white tie or you get turned away. Now that to me just immediately ahead of time gives off a bad vibe. You know, if you're saying, granted you've paid £250, but if you don't wear exactly what we want you to wear, you can't come in. That to me is kind of rotten. That's a bit rotten. And I don't know if just no one told them that at the previous ball it had been white tie encouraged rather than white tie mandatory. I don't know if they just weren't aware of that as a fact, because almost everyone did turn up in white tie last time. There were only a couple of people that did, but you know what? It didn't detract from anyone else's fun that 3 people weren't wearing white tie. Because what kind of person has less fun because another person isn't wearing a tailcoat? An insane person, that's who. But I was on the Facebook group and like someone was being a real arse about the fact that they were like, well, I got my ticket for a white tie. And if you're not going to match up to the expectations or the demands of the event, then you're irresponsible for buying a ticket in the first place. What the fuck? What the fuck? That's insane. It should have been white tie encouraged. That was just, it set a really negative vibe from weeks ahead of the event by saying you're not going to be allowed in if you're not wearing white tie. That's rubbish. Anyway, everyone did obviously wear white tie and there was no problem with that aside from like cultural dress, which is the other equivalent. Although I will say, I think that's one of the few times when boys actually are quite strictly affected by dress codes. Dress codes are obviously more harsh on women because if you're a man, you can wear like a grey suit and a shirt to at least 4 different levels of dress codes. You know, it's so much easier. Also, if you just have a black suit, you can make that into anything from like white tie to smart casual. Like you can go smart casual, lounge suits, cocktail, black tie. That's a whole breadth of things you can wear just from one suit and then just using a different shirt, different tie. For women, it's an entirely different thing. So for smart casual, maybe you're wearing a dress, maybe you're wearing smart trousers, maybe you're wearing a skirt and top. That's one thing. Then you get to lounge suit. So that's like a jumpsuit or or like a knee length or shorter dress. Then you get to cocktail, which could be, it's a dress that's a bit more showy and expensive, or at least expensive looking, which is generally kind of knee length to then mid-axi level. Then black tie, you might have a short dress, you might have a long dress. Again, we're upping the level of fanciness visually. Then you get to white tie, and that's strictly long dresses. And if you're really like, if it's a sort of diplomatic dinner with your ambassadors and whoever else, or if it's a military event, then maybe you might go the whole hog and get like gloves and whatever else. Like, and there are people on TikTok and whatnot who'd be like, can you tell the difference between this black tie dress and white tie dress? And they're talking absolute horseshit. They'll be like, well, this one shows a bit more cleavage. And you're like, no one gives a shit. Actually, no one does give a shit. Having been to a white tie event, no one gives a shit about like how much cleavage or not. It's whatever. Because you also, like, the Met Gala is supposed to be white tie. So come on, like it's more fast and loose than people are treating it in an online discourse world. So that there's so many more layers to it for women than men. So this is like the one time when the men have to actually like go out and get a specific outfit for the purpose. And still, women have to get a specific dress for this as well. I was re-wearing my dress I wore to the Trinity Scholars Ball. That's another ball that I'd forgotten to bring up, which it wasn't an Oxford ball, obviously. It was a completely different kettle of fish. We had a lovely dinner there. I was with all the people who had won the scholarships at Trinity, which is very exciting, very Sally Rooney thing to do. And then we went out to the club afterwards, and it was a super fun time. It was very different because it wasn't sort of all situated in one place, because then, you know, it ends up in the club. It was a super fun time. I had a lot of fun at that, mostly because of the people. And I think also my enjoyment of this penguin is on the move, on the march. My enjoyment of this ball also was very contingent on the people there, more so than like the actual organization, which thank God for the people, because that's the only thing that was stopping me from feeling completely irate at how shortchanged I feel. But you know, I look back at those balls that were held by Regent's Park, and you know, the Oriel ball went on for twice as long because it wasn't just until midnight, then pushed through until the morning. So it was twice as long, and it took place on more quads. But ultimately, I think the attention to detail was greater at Regent's Park, which was, again, £70 than at the Oriel ball. I think as well, things like having a tarot reader and a caricaturist, there should have been 4 of each. I'm being so serious. The queue was just so the queue was like an hour and a half long to see a tarot reader and a caricaturist. You're like, why aren't there more of these? Why isn't there a caricaturist on every quad? It was all these kinds of things where I'm like, I've paid a lot of money, and I would love to see the breakdown of what that was spent on, because also you're not even having to hire the venue. It's the college. You know, that surely would be the biggest expense. Anyway, so all that to say, I was getting quite annoyed at a lot of organisation things. I know I'm not the only one. There's quite a lot of alumni there who now work in like events organising, and they were going, what the fuck? What's happened here? Because also like that ABBA tribute band was late, like a half an hour late. So there's this massive lull where we're all just standing around going, when's Voulez-Vous coming on? Like, when's it coming on? Also, because the headliners weren't as attention grabbing as we wanted them to be, so many more people were at the second tent doing the ceilidh, which there just was not enough room, and the microphone was not loud enough to convey the instructions. So that was quite chaotic. It wound up being fun, but it was the least organised ceilidh that I've ever been to, and I've been to a fair few now. So all that to say, for the price tag, I didn't feel as though I got even close to what I paid for in terms of the organisation. But I still managed to have a fun time, which I'm really proud of myself for, because I'd stressed myself out so much about not having as much fun as I wanted to have. So I met up with the Masters boys beforehand, which when I say Masters boys also includes prosciutto, but it's the boys. It's the boys. So the boys include Ayush, Roberto, and Vinay, and prosciutto. And we did our photos beforehand. We went to the Ragcam. You got to do photos at Ragcam. You have to do photos at Ragcam. I was staying also in a hotel in Headington, and I didn't realize quite how far away I was going to be, because when you're looking at the map of Cowley, it's kind of a 3-pronged road thing heading west, and because the roads head out in a straight line, it's difficult to tell how zoomed out you are, if that makes sense. Like it looks the same whether you're zoomed in or zoomed out because of the angle the roads are at. So I was like, oh yeah, that's like a 20-minute walk to then get to Magdalen Bridge and then cross, and then you're at Oriel. No, no, I was like 2.5 miles away. So I had to get my taxi. That took way longer than I expected to get over there. The hotel also was above an Indian restaurant, and I had specifically not had any food for quite some time, because I was like, I want to max out on the food that's there to feel like I've got my money's worth, which again, as I say, I didn't feel like I got that. So I was so hungry with the smell of the Indian food coming up. I was a rumbly of the tumbly. And also there was a bar like 2 doors down that was playing reggaeton really loudly, which the guy kept apologizing to me for. And I was like, honestly, that's the vibe. Really enjoying putting on my makeup and having like arse shaking music playing. So that was getting me in the mood. So then I met up with the boys at the pub. We got our photos. We went inside. We had our couple of glasses of champagne and there was some lovely like string quartet and opera singing going on. All very fancy and very fun from that point. When I got there also, I didn't know how many people I was going to know that were there because I'm on the older end of the spectrum now, unfortunately. I was one of the older ones there. And I was like, there's not going to be anyone from like my year group, year above, year below. I think it's going to be pretty sparse. Actually, there were tons of people from the year below. There were a handful of people in my year, which was nice to catch up with them. But also there were loads of people who are younger than me that I had met before and we remembered each other and we had a lovely catch up. That was really great. Do you know what was also so nice is that there were people that I've not met before but who recognized me and came up to me and started chatting. They were like, this is a really weird question, but did you do modern languages? And I was like, yes. And they're like, did you make TikToks about doing modern languages? And I was like, yes, I did. And they were like, this was two separate people, 2 separate occasions came up to me and were like, that really helped me out when I was doing my applications. It helped me out with like what I was going to write in my personal statement and what college I was going to apply to, what course I was going to apply to. And it was just a real comfort to hear from someone who's been through it themselves. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. That's what it is about. I helped other people and it felt good. I felt so great and also quite famous, and that was really good for my ego. I felt on top of the world after that. Maybe I should keep making educational TikToks. Maybe I should keep up. Also, my goodwill has continued because I got a DM on TikTok yesterday or the day before from a girl saying, I'm aware that you made that video quite a long time ago, but I am writing my personal statement at the moment and the support from school is not existent, and I was wondering if you would just have a little glance over my personal statement, no worries if not type thing. And I was like, send it over, here's my email, send it over, I'll look at it. And within 40 minutes I'd sent back all my detailed notes and I was like, I am such a kind person. I am so helpful, I am so nice. Yes, that's how I react to doing good deeds for others. It's just my head swelling up, but it feels good. It does feel really nice to be like in a position of being able to give advice and have the evidence of that these people are now at the uni and that, you know, something that I said has helped them get to that point. That feels really nice. It feels really nice. And I gave one of them my card as well. Also, who wants to see my cards that I've had made? Because I was like, what happens if I do just bump into someone who, you know, I want to connect with? Maybe they're like a person that I could have a chat with and give advice to, but also maybe they're a person who can give advice to me / a job. So I've had these printed. Look at that hot pink. This feels like American Psycho. It's upside down, it is. Hot pink business card with my QR code on the back so you can get to my link tree and it's got my headshot on it. Just call me Patrick Bateman. Don't actually. So those I put in like a dozen cards in my bag just in case. And I did give out a couple, so that felt good. Felt really good. Also, shout out to Preston, who is such a fucking scream. Met him for the first time and he is going to be the MCR president and he is so much fun. Love talking to you. Also, it was bumping into people who everyone that I know that I bumped into also brought up one of 2 things immediately. Straight away, it was either, it's your lovely boyfriend here. It's your lovely Scottish boyfriend here. No, he's still in America. He's back on Wednesday. He's back tomorrow, guys. He's back tomorrow. I can't wait for him to come home. Or it was, I keep seeing your podcast stuff. I keep watching it. I keep seeing your podcast stuff. Yeah, you're not liking it though, are you? As mostly me on 2 accounts liking it. But I appreciate that everyone's seeing it and no one has made any comment like, please stop posting. It's all I see on my feed. So that's a positive in my eyes. Hopefully people seeing me in real life and bringing up the podcast will be an impetus for them to translate that conversation into listening numbers, because I can see how many listeners I'm getting and where they are. And I know that it's not the people who brought it up. No. But seriously, I hope you're listening. And if you are listening for the first time, love you. Another thing about being at the ball is just the fact that I really got to be poddy again, which I was thinking about this yesterday. This was like a whole thing. In second year, I had a friend who said to me that there was kind of a capital P poddy and a lowercase p poddy, and that really fucked with me for ages. And I remember saying it to my therapist. I was like, you know, I just feel like I've got these kind of dual personalities where there's like performance poddy and then there's like quiet poddy. And she was like, do you actually believe that? And I was like, no, I don't actually. I don't know why I said that. That's just something that I've been kind of told repeatedly, that I have this kind of dual thing going on where I like amp up myself and have a separate self when I'm in social situations. Then I have my like quiet introverted self. She's like, I don't think you are introverted like at all. I just don't think that is a part of you that exists. I think it's all one part, and I think that, you know, that's just someone who's jealous of you, trying to knock you down a peg by telling you that you're being fake, and I don't think you are. And never has that been truer than at this ball, because there were so many people there who were like, oh my god, poddy, hi poddy. And that felt really good, because up here I really miss being poddy, just in terms of the name rather than like the persona, just the name. I'm Charlotte to everyone up here, and that's fine. It's a really pretty name and I like it, and I actually do think that having a French name influenced me as a child to be more interested than the average person in French, which then obviously later on down the line led to me getting a first class degree in French at Oxford. You know, that was the pipeline. I have an aptitude for language anyway, and I think I would have wound up studying languages, but I don't think I would have been as obsessed with French had I not been given a French name and had that nominal determinism playing in the back of my mind. However, being poddy is such a state of mind, and to some extent, therefore, this girl who's trying to knock me down the peg was kind of right, because there's the poddy that I am at university was like a one name machine. Like, people knew who I was, and it felt really nice to feel kind of like a campus celebrity, which is really big headed, but that is just how it felt to walk up Cornmarket Street in second year and be stopped like 5 times on the way up because I saw people that I knew, like, oh my god, Poddy, how are you? Or people that are like, oh, you're Poddy, I've heard your name. That felt really good, and it felt really nice to be back, because people in college did know who I was. I was quite a visible person. You know, I get involved with like marketing campaigns for the college, and then I did the campaign for outreach last year, which was really exciting, and I was like part of the squash team, and I was part of the plays. I was just quite a visible person. I was very sociable. I went to all the events, all this kind of thing, and that felt really good to be in that place where so many people did know who I was, you know, and know like the reputation that I had when I was at uni. That felt really good. And people that were younger than me that I've not met before, the fact they know me from other people knowing me, that just felt really nice. And I miss being poddy in that way. So I am going to start introducing myself as Poddy. I don't even care. I'm going to start. I know that Kieran only ever calls me Charlotte, and he gets quite weirded out when, or no, it's not that he gets weirded out. He tries to weird me out by calling me Poddy and then just like getting a weird reaction from me, because it's just unusual for him to say it. But I am going to start introducing myself as Poddy to people, because I just like being that person. It feels really good. And I don't think it is like a separate character or persona that I'm playing. It's not like a sort of drag persona that is different from me and played up. It just is myself at my most sociable. Like, it's that kind of spectrum thing of my own personality, and I love being that. I love being that person. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Also, let's talk about other necessities that I thought of and other people didn't. I was like, I am a smug bastard right now. This was a great move from me. Number 1, hand fan. One of these, not an electric one, a like drag queen fan. It was just a paper fan. It actually was a prop from Amadeus that I kept that was like mass ordered, bulk ordered. Just a little paper and wood fan. That saved my absolute bacon. And it was great on the dance floor as well to dance with the fan. But I kept so much cooler than everyone else. Everyone else was wet. Everyone was wet. On that note, also, the amount of setting spray I used was a fantastic move. I also used a really sticky primer that I got the other day from the Superdrug in Lincoln while I was visiting Max. I mostly got it because I found the bottle quite ergonomically satisfying. It's like a little, how to describe it, a sort of softened triangle, but it's like a rubbery texture, and it feels quite nice to squish and hold in the palm of your hand. And that stuff, the makeup was stuck to my face. I was still wearing like a full, almost perfectly maintained face of makeup by the end of the night. It is insane the extent to which that stuff did stay on my face, and setting spray after every single step. That was a good job. Also, the biggest one, bringing Crocs. Now, I was wearing my quote unquote sensible shoes, which are, I would say, like 7-inch platforms which are gunmetal and gold swirly, and they were once complimented by a drag queen, and that was really good for my ego, so I refer to them as my drag queen shoes. That was a really great move. So I was fantastic height and I wasn't tripping over my skirt. And then when it got to 10 p.m, I was like, okay, I've done the first 3 hours. I think I can make the switch now. So I was wearing, and excuse me because my legs are starting to grow back in, I was wearing my platform Crocs. They look quite mucky actually now. Platform Crocs, which are pink and sparkly and crucially cushioned, because I, at the last Oriel ball, brought flip-flops in my handbag to switch into, but that's just too flat. You can't jump on a flip-flop, and I could still feel all the texture of the floor through them. That wasn't comfy. The Crocs were such a move, and everyone was so jealous. No one thought they were cringe. Everyone's like, everyone, my mum was like, oh, don't, silly shoes, you can't wear these silly shoes to the ball. I did wear my silly shoes to the ball, and everyone was very jealous of them because they were the move. Also, just while I'm thinking about it, they needed to have like another option of things to do when it was the silent disco, because at the previous ball, although I didn't make it to this point, I'm reliably informed that they had a sort of crash out zone with beanbags and a movie on a projector. They should have had that, because if your only option is the silent disco, I was like, I'm getting quite sick of the silent disco. This is making me want to go. There needed to be more options. I just have so many notes. I have so many notes for the organisation of it. And listen, I couldn't organise a piss in a brewery. I lasted a week as Ents rep. I'm not an organiser, but I know what organisation is possible, having been to other balls. I know what can be achieved, and I don't necessarily feel that it was. And also the next day, someone did an anonymous post on Facebook, and I keep checking in on it to see if anyone else has reacted, because I'm like, I can't be the only person to like it. But it was them being like, I didn't get my money's worth. The headliners were not good enough. Like, the highlight of the night was an ABBA tribute. You don't want a tribute to be the biggest thing that's on at a ball, particularly for the 700th. It should be someone that we all know and are really excited to see and would pay money to go to a concert to see, and it's a white tie event, but just didn't feel like you got a white tie experience out of it, which I agree with. I think it was a decidedly black tie event, All that aside, I did push through. I pushed through my 3 o'clock scaries. I got to 4 o'clock. Daylight started to happen. I had a lovely FaceTime with Kieran because time difference. So it was just like late at night for him rather than early morning for me. And I had my bacon sandwich. I took a moment and I was like, we're so close to the end. At this point, I'm locked in. I'm getting to 6 a.m. Now that it's 4:45, I'm getting to the end. So silent disco finished at 5. At that point, we're all kind of standing there like, what happens now? What's going to happen now? And people beelined for the breakfast. I had been quite tactical in getting mine before the big beeline when the music finished. And then we all just sort of hung about for a bit in first quad, and then we did the survivors photo. No one thought I was going to make the survivors photo. I said to Kieran, I'll feel shortchanged if I don't make it to 3. For my sake, I need to make it through to 3 a.m. At no point did anyone think, myself included, that I would get further than that. But it was just the prospect of breakfast that got me through. It's the idea that maybe I'll get breakfast. And, we got to the end and I looked around my boys. We'd had such a fun time dancing together. The boys had quite a lot of fun having their drunk cigarettes and taking photos of them that looked quite cool, actually. They're quite cool photos. Obviously, I didn't touch them because I'm scared of anything happening to my lungs. My lungs are very precious to me, and they're also already so small. They're so small. Why can't I move forward? When I used to try to do a long note in choir, that was a struggle. I had to take secret breaths, and I don't want to impact my breathing any more than that. So I do not touch those things with a barge pole. And I'm not just saying that because I know my mum's listening. I genuinely don't touch them. But the boys' photos did look quite cool. I looked around at my boys at the end of the night when we were all there posing for the survivors photo, and I was like, we did it. We pulled through. We did the whole hog. And at that point, I'd pushed through the tiredness. I was out the other side of it. I was feeling really quite normal, which surprised me. Everyone else was like, I feel like death. And I was like, you know what? I felt like that at 3 a.m. It's just another day to me. And I got my Uber that was twice as much money to go back to the hotel in Headington. I got 4 hours of sleep and then checked out. And I went to get an iced chai that morning. I was like, I feel so parched. Because also I didn't get drunk. I think it's actually quite hard to get drunk at balls, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's just because you're expending so much energy, not sure. In this instance, it was because the cocktails were watered down. It was like the flavor of a cocktail had been somewhere in the room when they were shaking up water in the thing like that. It was so mild. The flavor was it was H2O, baby. H2O with a suggestion of a hint of an implication of there being some alcohol. They were very, very subtle flavors. So I had like 5 over the course of the night, but the drink du jour, that was water. We were warm. It was so warm. So everyone was mostly just chugging water. So I was like, again, I don't feel like I've got my money's worth. I feel like I've like got £10 worth of booze in my system right now, which is not, it's not £250 worth. I didn't really have a hangover. I had a headache from like a tiredness headache, and I can feel the difference in my head between a tiredness headache and a hangover. So I got this iced chai, went into Cafe Nero, and listen, I love Cafe Nero, and I love like a white girl chai that is mostly just milk and syrup. I know that's not what chai is supposed to be. I'm well aware of that. But I love when it's like cold milk. I just love the flavour of milk. I love the flavour of milk. And as I'm always saying, iced chai is just an excuse to drink milk in public without looking like a pervert. So I ordered this iced chai, and I genuinely, in the 3 steps it took me to walk from the counter to the door, I had polished off the whole thing. That thing had disappeared because it's mostly ice. Now let's talk about this Cafe Nero. Why is it that the ice is such big cubes? There's barely any liquid in the cup. There's massive. You know, I get quite annoyed when I have a Starbucks because it's like ice chips and they can get stuck in the little hole that you're sipping from. That's quite annoying. I also think they should be giving me straws, not a little hole in the thing. That's whatever. But at least when you have the chips, that allows for actual more space for the liquid, because that didn't last me more than 2 seconds. I polished that thing off. So then I was walking out the door and I saw my park and ride bus leaving, and I was like, I'm not going to run for that. I'm not going to indignify myself by trying to run for the park and ride bus number 300. So I'm just going to have, you know what, fuck it, going to have another iced chai. So I stopped at this like Mediterranean cafe and had another iced chai, but it was one of those where it's like, it's very thick. They've whizzed the milk up with the chai, so it's kind of powdery and thick. Not for me. I don't really like that very much. And then I had, my tummy's rumbling because I'm remembering, I had this panini that was like hummus, falafel and roast veg, and that was just what the doctor ordered, but it took such a long time to make that like the 20-minute interval between buses had rolled around, so I had to then sprint, goodbye dignity, for the bus. Got on the bus, went home, easy peasy, piece of piss, and then crashed out at home. I was like, I am exhausted. I'm exhausted, but I couldn't be too exhausted because my niece was visiting and my parents were looking after her, and that was very sweet. And I had got her a birthday present, which I am so proud of. I got her this little music box, the, you know, jewelry box type thing. You open it up and it's got a little unicorn dancing around with a very sweet song, and you wind it up at the back and there's lots of drawers for stuff, and there's a little one of those sort of ribbed things that you put your rings in. She was so chuffed with that, and it was a really sweet present, and it's very satisfying to give a toddler a present that they're pleased with, because I find toddlers very unpredictable. And I'd been looking around the shop and they're all clothes and stuff, and I was like, I've actually not seen her since like December, so I don't know how big she is now. I've no idea which clothes are going to fit her hair. Granted, they all have like the years on them, but I don't know if she's tall for her age or not. And also I'm having to do the maths to figure out actually how old she is. You know, it's all these kinds of things. So I settled on the jewelry box, and the fact that she loved it so much was really satisfying. It feels really good to bring joy to a toddler. It feels really good to correctly predict what they're going to like. Because I feel a real affinity with toddlers. I think I kind of am one on the inside, and I relate to that unpredictability of joy. So it felt good to get that right. Yesterday, which was Monday, I drove back up the road. It was mostly an okay drive, apart from another funny turn that I had. Funny turn of the week. I need like a Harry Hill theme for my funny turn of the week. I'm having them so often now. Funny turn of the week coming up the road. Now, obviously, I've mentioned before, I was on my period. This is so gross, and I'm sorry. I'll cover your ears for 10 seconds if you get grossed out by stuff. My period was so heavy during the ball that I brought like a handful of tampons. I got through all of them and ruined my Spanx. Woo! Sorry to any future employers listening to this, but that, I want to keep it real. And I also want to destigmatize chat about periods, because it does really dictate my life. Kieran and I were watching Race Across the World, and the whole time when they're on these like 24-hour trains and they show what the toilets look like, every time I watch that, I'm like, what would I do if I was on a heavy period? Because my periods are heavy. What would I do? If I'm stuck on that for a 24-hour period and there's no place to like dispose of tampons and stuff, that would stress me the fuck out. I got stressed out in Sky when I was like, well, we're just going around the place, we're going to be using public toilets when we're there. What if there's no bin? What am I going to do with it then? I'm always thinking that's a real Roman Empire for me. I'm always thinking about that kind of thing. So the ball was quite a difficulty for that, and I did get quite bad cramps then. Nothing compared to what I had yesterday, because on my first leg, it's like a 6-hour journey, unless there's traffic on the M1, which there was on the way down, so that was 7 hours, and that was a warm journey. Way up, it was much cooler. But 2 hours into this journey, bearing in mind I'm meant to be stopping off at T-Bay at like 3.5 hours in, I was like, I have to pull over now. I have to pull over now. Because my cramps had been so bad. And they had started also when I had just left the petrol station. Like, just as I'm pulling out, starting on my journey, the cramps start. And I'm like, well, can't stop now. Like, what am I meant to do now? I can't pull over and get painkillers now. Like, I've started. I'm not going to stop I don't want to stop for ages yet. You know, I'm planning on only doing one stop. So let's just push through. And they got increasingly worse and worse as I was going up the M6. And then I started to get really hungry as well. And I was like, I had my massive cereal. I couldn't even finish my cereal. Dad had to finish my cereal. That's how much cereal I had. Why am I hungry? I've prepared not to be hungry for another like 2 hours yet. And the pangs of hunger combined with the cramps were so painful. I was like, it's starting to like distract me from my driving. It's not safe for me to be driving in this much pain. And I had to pull over at somewhere near Preston. I don't know, there was a service station that had two names. It sounded like a man's name. I had to pull over there, and I walked into the loo straight away and saw my own face in the mirror, and I had gone grey. I had lost all colour. I was ashen. I looked really ill, like just completely drained. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, guess I'm gonna sit down for like 40 minutes, take a couple of Nurofen Express, which they were not express on that day. Normally they are fast acting. I felt like I had to wait a really long time for that to kick in. I was doing like my pain relief meditation. Okay, here's the lore about me and pain relief meditation is that when I lived in Paris and I had really bad mouth ulcers, which ended up being the catalyst for me coming home, I couldn't take painkillers because I couldn't eat I couldn't eat any solids. So I therefore kept throwing up all the painkillers because there was nothing in my stomach. So I was really struggling. And the only thing that kept me from something bad, the only thing that kept me going at all was this pain relief meditation. Oh, I keep hitting this poor little chicken. This pain relief meditation for women by Katie Kremitzos, who does like a daily meditation podcast. She is churning those things out. There's this one pain relief meditation episode that essentially you start off breathing in as much as you possibly can and pushing it further and further, and then breathing out as much as you can, just to get you to focus on that to begin with. And then the idea is that you're visualizing in your head where the pain is located, and you imagine that you've got this kind of golden surface on the area of your body. So for instance, when I'm on my period, obviously it's here, and I'm imagining that I've got this layer of gold at the belly level, at the skin level, and when I breathe in, the in-breath causes it to glow and get warmer and warmer, and then when I breathe out, it kind of disintegrates and, you know, turns into ash, and I breathe out that ash. Now that sounds like a load of bollocks. However, that to me is the single most effective form of pain relief that I know. During childbirth probably wouldn't work, but for the pain that I experienced with having severe mouth ulcers and period pain and like hangover pain, anything like that, that works like nothing else for me. That is such an effective method, and I use it very frequently. I remember once Kieran laughed at me because I had to boot Max off Spotify to put on pain relief meditation for women, and he had been using Spotify on his telly for a party, so the music had just like cut out, and then it just said on the TV pain relief meditation for women, and Max was like, what the fuck what the fuck. But pain relief meditation for women, like, we're Y/N, me and Katie Kremitzos. She has saved my bacon many times. So I was having to like internally do the Kremitzos monologue to myself to visualize that until the Nurofen kicked in. And then in the meantime, I had a coffee and I had a sandwich. It was like 10:30, and I was like, fuck it, we have lunch now. I need that energy. I think I was just, my iron had disappeared. There was no iron left in this woman. So maybe now is the time for me to invest in the iron fish. Now, does everyone know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the iron fish? Because I've brought this up a few times and I've got a few blank spaces, but I get advertised the iron fish quite a lot. And it's literally just like a little fish made of iron that you then boil in water, and you drink the water because that water is infused with like 10 times the amount of iron that you actually need in a day. And they give it to women in pregnancy because they need more iron. And I get advertised this a lot because I'm borderline anemic. I remember when I had a blood test, because I kept obviously I've had like a fair amount of like fainting spells and funny turns in my life. There's a period where I was having more than usual. So that was actually because I wasn't eating anything because I was insane at the time. But I had blood tests all the same, and they came back and they were like, the spectrum of iron in your blood is kind of, it was like something like it's up to 400, and anything below 20 is when it's anemic and we need to worry, and you are at 25. So I'm nearly there, only 5 more iron units to go, and then we get into the anemia side of things. But I do think maybe I actually should ask a doctor about that, because I think maybe I may have lost those 5 points in the 4 years that have intervened. So I do think I should get the iron fish and just bite the bullet and improve my body, because having a funny turn on the motorway did freak me out, and I was downplaying it to mum because I didn't want her to panic. But I cannot emphasize enough how grey my face looked. That was quite scary. Anyway, then I got my act together and drove up the road and had no more problems. And I didn't stop at T-Big because I was like, I've had my stop. I don't want to do a second stop. And then just got all the way back and completely crashed out when I got back to base. And I recorded my radio show, which is currently live at time of recording. And then had a lovely sleep. And that's where we're at now. It's Tuesday morning currently, as I say, at time of recording, and Kieran's back tomorrow. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for him to be home. I am not enjoying missing him anymore. At first, it's like you can sort of tell yourself, oh, how nice is it to have someone that you love so much that you miss them like this. I don't like missing him anymore. I'm past the missing thing. I would quite like for him to come home. I would like for him to be back now. I would like for him to be a big spoon. I would like my big spoon back. I'm so excited for him to come home. But more than that, I'm so proud of everything that he has achieved at the World Cup. It has been such a resounding success for him, if not for Team Scotland, by which I mean the actual football team itself rather than supporters, because it's also been a resounding success for the Tartan Army. It's been an unbelievable coup for them, but more so for Kieran. He's just smashed everything out of the park. He's taken every opportunity. You know, he's spoken on radio like half a dozen times at this point and has done such an amazing job with it. He's performed for the masses. He's done some of the best gigs of his career. He's done like one gig that's led to 5 more after that. You know, the demand has been crazy. He's just about the only person in America right now who isn't in massive debt. He's somehow managed to make it green. How has he managed to get out of the red? Because he's a success story, because he's incredible, because he's great at everything, because he's so entertaining and charismatic and charming that people just want to support him as far as they possibly can. And I think that is the most wonderful thing. I am, however, worried that it's going to be a bit of a come down for him to come home and it's like grey and miserable here. I'm going to have to pull out all the stops to make the transition from America to Scotland as easy as possible and try to avoid the post-holiday blues as much as I possibly can. He's already talking about the next holiday. Like he's planning ahead. He did bring up America and I was like, or Norway. Or we could go to Norway or anywhere else. And then he was like, maybe we could go to Broadway. And I was like, do you have any idea how much Broadway tickets cost? They are the most expensive things on the planet. And in all honesty, I would rather see like 5 West End shows than 1 Broadway show, because that would be the same amount of money. Or fuck it, 15 player pie and pints at the Oran Moor. So hold tight to find out where we go to next. But you know, that's classic Kieran that he's like, right, where next? Got the travel bug, where next? I'm so glad to have him almost home. Oh, it's gonna be such a relief. I've coped well. Do you know what? To my credit, I've coped well. I have coped really well. I thought it was going to be a real struggle. I did think I was going to write a full novel in the time that he was gone. That was my plan. I got 5,000 words in and then just couldn't find the time because I had accidentally planned too much stuff, which was better than the alternative to not have enough stuff going on. But it's actually gone by far quicker than I thought it was going to. I think this is the most difficult bit, is now that the actual tournament is finished as far as Scotland's concerned and people have come home and he's just doing sort of visiting family and friends and going to theme parks and stuff. Now that it's the home stretch, this has been the hardest part where I'm like, oh, I just want you home now. Oh, just come home now. So he's nearly home. The war is nearly over. War is over. We're nearly there. I'm quite worried also about how much I've shit talked the ball. I just want to really re-emphasize that I did have a really nice time. My problem is not with my like level of fun that I achieved. It's with the organisers. And I don't like to shit talk. I just think I have a right to, because of the price tag. That, yeah. Okay, I'm going to conclude on that as far as that topic of conversation is concerned. Right. Now, my dog fire hydrants are thin on the ground. I've essentially run out, so I'm relying on Kieran's exploits from America. And I did write one down the other day. What was it? Oh, Kieran had one that was the fact that Canadians say sorry and a really frequently. That's good stuff. That's good stuff that they say that a lot. I like that they live up to that reputation. Okay, new words. All right, flens. Flens. To slice the skin or fat from a carcass, especially that of a whale. Flens. That's F-L-E-N-S-E. Flens. So let's find the time to use the word flens today. Also, shout out to Sophie, who managed to ram in almost every word that I've brought up in my new words segment, including pavonine. That came up quite a lot. And I think that still is my favourite that we've brought up. All right. What else remains for me to say? Tune in to my radio show on Lomond Radio on Tuesdays between 10 and 12. As I say, that is currently going out as I am recording this. And also keep an eye out for that big announcement. I actually don't know when it's going to happen. I've not been told. So it's some point soon. And I also did tell like dozens of people at the Royal Ball. So they already know that that's going to be slightly lessened impact. But it is a really exciting one. It's really exciting. So keep an eye out for that announcement. In the meantime, this has been Podscast. I've been Poddy Wilson and I love you.